What's going on, everybody? Bauer Brown here. Welcome back to the channel, guys. And while you're at it, welcome back to me. Bauer Brown is back in town. That's right. I've been out of town for about a week, and I just got back, so it's I guess it's time to get back into the swing of things here, right? And start doing some tutorials, right? Good stuff. All right, so I don't really have anything too special for today, right? Like I said, just got back into town, and I want to ease into this, right? I don't want to make anybody's brain hurt, especially mine. So we're gonna start off simple. All right, so what I got for you guys is something that I'm pretty darn sure I've gone over in the past, and you may or may not remember this. Probably do. I know we've been going over a lot of scripting tools lately, right? Very, very helpful stuff when you're working on your maps. All right, good way to get things done efficiently, quickly, you know, all that. But one of the things that I've been asked lately, I've been fielding a lot of questions about what particular tool I use when working with splines, right? So I have this roadway here. Like, how did I make that? What spline do I use to put down trees and objects and stuff like that? All right. Well, the tool that I use is let's back up a second here. The second half of that question was how do you use the spline tools that come bundled with Giant's Editor? All right, so you may or may not have noticed, if you go up to scripts and you go down to terrain, you have paint terrain by spline, place objects on terrain, and set terrain height by spline. Those three come bundled with Giant's Editor. All right, so now one of the questions was, if it gives you these tools, why would you need any other? All right, well, let me put it this way. The three tools that they give you there, those three tools exist in their most basic form, like the most basic form, okay? No bells and whistles, no nothing, just cut and dry. Like, you can paint a line and that's it. One single texture, not much more than that. All right, so the tool that I use, I get from Farmer Boys Modding, right? I've been using different versions of these scripting tools, or these spline tools, I guess you could say, for quite some time now. Right, they've been updated throughout the years with each new iteration of Giant's Editor, or basically just the script itself updated on its own. Like I said, it's gone through a lot of changes, right? But it all started here. It started with these three. So at one point in time, you know, many moons ago, this was all that was available, and at that time we made the best of it, you know, and it worked perfectly fine. But now we can do much, much, much more with the tools that are available to us. All right, so I honestly, I don't even touch these tools anymore. I can't even say rarely. I just don't. I really don't. But I will, however, since you asked, I will quickly. Now, I'm just not going to get into like any demonstrations or anything crazy with this, because I will be given, you know, a few minor demonstrations a little bit later about these other scripting tools that we're going to use, the other spline tools. All right, and the principles that we're going to go over there all apply to these tools here. Okay. So what we'll do quickly is we'll go to we'll go up to Window, and we're going to open up our script editor. Okay. Get that open, and then go back to terrain on the left hand side there. I'm going to open up that folder, and I'm going to open up Paint Terrain by Spline. Now you can see how simple this tool is, right? You literally have two lines. Okay, just two lines. Only one of them we have to worry about. All right, so this isn't actually the entire script. All right, so where you see where it says here, this editor utils. Okay, that is actually the script that's doing all this work. Okay, and that's right here on the left hand side. If you click on editor utils, all the way down there at the bottom, or close to the bottom, you can see this paint terrain by spline. All right. And all of this is the actual script. All right. So the script isn't necessarily that small, but literally there's only two things we need to do here. Right. And one of them being this first number here. You can see that this 80, that is the texture ID number. Okay. Now you're going to need a way to get this texture ID. All right. So you can see on the right hand or the left hand side of my screen, where is it? I have something here called terrain layers. Okay. Now that's yet another script. If I can find where I got this script from, and I can find a link for it, I may put it up on the video description for you guys. Maybe not though, because the reason why not, and I'm not trying to be selfish or stingy or anything like that, is the most updated version of these spline tools, right? From Farmer Boys includes that with it, right? So when you run the scripts, it gives you all the IDs that are currently on your map. Doesn't get any better than that, right? So you don't need to run multiple scripts. You can see I have a bunch of scripts in here, and most of them are obsolete now because they're all bundled into that one nice, neat little script from Farmer Boys. Okay. So like I said, this first number up here is the ID number for your texture. So if you want to paint a line, you're going to need the ID, right? So right now I'm just going to use any old random number, right? Just for demonstration purposes, I guess. Or for the sake of the video, I should say. Okay. And then the second number that you have here, right there, that number 4. All right. That is what I like to call a half width. Okay. And most things within the editor are measured in what I like to call half width. And the reason for that is when you look at your terrain layer, we have what's called a units per pixel. Okay. And that units per pixel is usually set to 2. All right. So that means for every 2 pixels, for every pixel, it equals 2 meters. All right. So you basically double everything. So if you have your brush size here, right, if we look at this road, okay, and well, I'm just going to rough this in here like this. Okay. So we got right about here, I guess, right? So we're at a radius of about 4, give or take. All right. So that gives me an 8-meter road. All right. So kind of, because like I said, every pixel is worth 2 meters. All right. So same thing applies to your brush size. All right. So if you wanted to use that paint tool up there, that script, you would create a script, or you would create a spline. That's a little bit better. All right, let me find a good place for the spline, maybe out of the grass there, somewhere where we can see. Okay, so you would lay that spline down somewhere, like right in here somewhere. All right, now you want to click the end of your spline. All right, and I'm assuming that you guys are familiar with working with your splines, hopefully. Now, with the spline itself, my number one rule is now and always has been to never rotate the spline, right? And by that, I mean grabbing the handle there. You can see that little green handle. Let's see what we got here. There we go. Let's try that. There we go. And this little green handle. Okay, so never actually rotate it if you need to, like so. So if it's not facing the direction that you want it to, all right, what you can do is use your up arrow key. Will get you to, oops, I'm not actually on that. Let me click an end here. Let's try this. There we go. So you can use the up arrow key will get you to the start of the spline, and a down arrow key will get you to the end. Now this one's already fairly straight, but what I do is I will actually just use my Control B, okay, and I'll get the spline in an area where I want it. Like let's say, I don't know, like somewhere over here. All right. Now when you're done, you'll be left with a little bit of a hook on the end of your spline. What I'll normally do is just delete that endpoint right there, and it leaves me with just 2 control vertexes, right, in a completely straight spline. Now you can use that Control B, or you don't even really need Control B. You can just kind of grab it and move it any way you want, right? You can put that into any orientation you want. But like I said, above and beyond everything else, if you have any value other than 0 inside of this rotate Y, you're not going to get the desired results that you want, all right? And it's not going to work exactly the way you were expecting it to, okay? So you just want to grab the end of that spline and move it around that way and make sure that it always stays at 0, all right? And then from there, it's as easy as just running this script, all right? And we can do that really quick. Not a problem. We can go up to scripts. I know I wasn't really going to give an example, but I guess I will. He twisted my arm. All right, so we'll go to terrain, and then we'll paint terrain by spline. And you have to make sure that spline is highlighted, by the way. And then there you go. So it was really that easy. Now, like I said, you only get one texture. You don't get to work with multiple textures or anything fancy, but it does the trick, right? So if you want to paint some very simple pathways or roadways or what have you, I guess this is an okay way to do it. All right. So that basically is what's going on in there. So again, let's go back in here and I'll just explain a few things again. Let's open up our script editor. Maybe it's already open here. It is already open. Okay. So like I said, again, the first number is the ID for your texture. The second number is the width. Okay. How wide do you want this to be? And just remember, if you want, an 8 meter wide area, road or path or whatever you're working on, you would put a 4 there. If you want it to be 10 meters, you put a 5, 20 meters, you put a 10, you get the idea. All right. We're not going to really talk about the place objects on terrain, just because I really don't want to confuse you guys unnecessarily. All right. Because the script I'm about to show you, or the tools I'm about to show you are much more flexible, intuitive, and user-friendly than what this is. Okay. So let's just get by that one for now. All right. And then the very last one we got here is the set terrain height by spline. And again, it's only 2 lines. There's only 2 numbers you need to change. The first number is the height above or below the spline. Okay. Now you can consider 0 the spline itself. All right. So if you only want to affect the land surface up to the spline, you don't want to go any higher, any lower. Maybe you're just trying to flatten an area. Then you would put 0. If you're trying to create, say a riverbed, like some kind of ditch or something like that, you can go into the negatives and go down into the ground. Like I said, by using a negative number, or you can use a positive number and, make some sort of platform or raised area on the ground. All right. And again, the second number is your half width, right? So if you want an 8 meter wide area, you would use a 4. Okay. And we can do this again really quickly. So I guess we'll have a quick look here. Now, what I meant about that 0. So now we have that set for, what is that set for right now? I don't remember. Okay, it's set for 0, actually. So let's set that for 3 really quick. All right, and then we'll save that. Okay, so if I was to run this script right now, I would have an 8 meter wide surface that runs the length of the spline 3 meters above the ground. Okay, that's what that would give me. And we'll do that right now. We'll run scripts. We'll go to terrain, and then we will go set terrain height by spline. Okay, and then there you go. So that's what that's all about. And we can go in a reverse order, and we could turn that into a -3. So instead of going 3 meters up, we would go 3 meters down, and then you can make that into a river or something like that, or just some sort of pit for whatever reason. Now, under what circumstances would you use 0? Okay, so maybe you're working on some uneven ground and you're going to put a roadway through here, right? You would keep it at 0 and it would just flatten like an 8 meter wide area along the edge of that spline. Or let's say maybe you wanted to create a ramp going up to some kind of building or something like that, right? Or leading up to the top of a cliff. All right, so what you would do is you would just keep that first number at 0 and it would bring the land surface up to the spline itself. Like I said, you can consider 0 the actual spline. So if we move this back to 0, okay, and then we hit save. All right, get out of there. And if we run that script one more time, we'll get what looks like a kind of like a ramp, right? So let's run that just so you can see what it does really quickly. I'm tired. I'm getting lost here. Let's go to terrain. That's where it's at. Set terrain height by spline. Okay, and there you go. And there's your little rampway. Okay, so that's in a nutshell how those scripts work. Okay, so there's not much more to that. So if you're getting confused by those scripts, it's probably because you expect that it does so much more than what it actually does, right? There's only 2 numbers to work with, and it's very limited into what, I say limited, it's limited by comparison. Okay, so it does a lot on its own. Before these scripts were available, right, we couldn't even do this much. Everything was done by hand. So when these scripts came along, they were heaven sent. We made the best out of what we had. But now, like I said, these are basically antiquated. They really are. They need to be updated. That's why we have the tools that we have now that are made available. Like for example, the guys over at Farmer Boys, right? And that's what I use almost exclusively. And it's not really like I have any other choice either, because I'm pretty sure that's the only type of tool like that's available right now. And it's really all you need. You really wouldn't need another tool that does the exact same thing. All right, so let's not waste any time with this. Let's jump on over, and I'm going to show you where to grab these tools. And then we'll go over a couple quick examples on how to use them. Like I said, this is going to be very basic, right? And the reason I'm going to keep it basic is you'll see that once we get to the website, they do an outstanding job of explaining things, right? Of outlining how the entire tool works, what all the attributes mean, the whole 9 yards. They have tutorials. They have it. You don't even need me. Just go spend some time on the website and you are good to go. So speaking of websites, so let's get over there right now. Let's get off of YouTube and let's head over to Farmer Boys. All right. So that was farmerboysmodding.com. All right. So any of you guys that are just joining us and you're not familiar with this website, there is an awful lot here. It's not just scripts, right? There's a forum where you can interact with other people. There's mods, right? If you go all the way down here, look at all these mods that they have, right? So there's tons and tons of mods that you can play around with and you can try out. There's all sorts of tutorials if you want to learn new things. And there's, like I said, there's some scripting tools and stuff, right? If you're interested in making roads or any other map making tutorials, they're all here. All right. So this is a great place to be. I've spent countless hours here throughout the years, and I recommend you do the same. All right. Okay, now this site here, it does require a membership. Okay, so you want to join and then log in. I do recommend that if you visit the site, that you turn off your ad blocker. Okay, because these guys put a lot of hard work into the site, and what little revenue they may or may not get from the ads only aids to keep the site going and help us out. Right, so this is a great resource for us to have. We enjoy having it here. And every one of us likes to come in and play with the mods and download the scripts and that sort of thing. And so, to help keep the site going, and show them your support, just turn off your ad blocker, guys. It's that easy. One ad popping up every now and then. It's not gonna make or break you. I'm pretty sure you can suffer through one ad or two. All right. So anyhow, like I said, once you get all joined up there and you get yourself logged in. And you will need to be logged in, or else you will not be able to interact with the site in any way. And by that, I mean, post to the forums or download scripts or anything like that. Okay, so once you get all that done and you're all settled in, right? So this very first section here where it says topics, I'm going to go down to the second topic. I believe either the first or second is going to get you to where we need to be. But I'm going to click on the second one right here. Okay. Now, this post right here, I'm interested in this first link up towards the top, but I do recommend that you go through here and you read this entire post. I really, really do. I mean, if you look through here and look at all the information, all the examples they give you, they break everything down as far as what does what everything means. You can't go wrong. So like I said, there's a good example of a roadway here. Go through, spend some time, read up on this. You will not be sorry. Okay. Because like I said, the explanation that I'm going to give you is going to be pretty limited and possibly even vague and probably even boring. So you may want to rely on this resource here a little bit to get the information you could actually use. All right, so let's click on that link right there. And the second page, I recommend the same thing. If you look here, they break everything down. These are all the attributes that you're going to find inside of these scripts that we're going to use. Okay. And this breaks it all down, tells you what every one of them means, what every value means, what the attribute itself means, the whole 9 yards. So definitely spend some time here, read up on it. It's like any other thing that you buy. You wouldn't just jump right into it if you don't know what it does. You want to read the instructions for it. Figure things out and go that route with it. So that's what I recommend, man. It's a lot of very useful information in here. Okay. Like I said, I didn't just download the tool and start going crazy with it. I had to come back here and check out a few of the explanations to figure out some of the things. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down here to the bottom of that post there where it says updated spline scripts, and we're going to download that. Now I already have a copy, so I'm going to skip that step, but download it to a location where you're going to be able to get back to it. All right. Now mine, I think, not sure where I have my copy. But once you get that to a folder, right, it's going to come in a zipped format. So unzip it and there's going to be another folder inside of there. Grab that folder. Now there's usually two ways that I recommend that you get these scripts into Giants Editor. Okay. And one way is to just open up the editor or the script editor within Giants Editor and just copy and paste. But if you look inside that folder that you just downloaded, there's several scripts inside of there. So it's going to take you a quick minute to kind of copy and paste everything. So instead, I recommend the other method, okay? And that's to go basically to your C drive or whatever comparable drive you have, most likely C, and then go into users, find your username there, click on that, and then you're going to look for app data. Now, app data, you can see it's a little bit faded out. If you don't see it, if it's not listed there, you need to go into your folder preferences and you need to, there may be like a checkbox or something that says show hidden files or folders or something to that effect. And whatever you need to do to make that visible, go ahead and do so. And then you'll be able to get into the app data. If for some reason you can't figure that out, up here in your, I'm not sure what that would be called. Title bar. I'm not sure. Right up here where your file path is, you could actually type in a backslash and then app data. You can see right there. You can just spell it out, type it in there, and it'll take you to the same place. It'll take you to the app data. Okay. All right. So click on the first folder there, the local. And then we want to scroll down a little bit until you see the versions of the version of Giants Editor that we are currently working with. And right now that would be Giants Editor 9.03. Okay, that's what we are currently working with as of this video. All right, so depending on if you've been around and you're doing this for a little while, you may have several versions in there. Okay. I know I have several versions of 8. I have several versions of 9. I did a little bit of house cleaning lately. Now on this machine, I only have one version, which is the version now we're looking at right here. All right. So anyhow, go in there and then you'll see the very first folder that we have there. It's called scripts. Double click on that, open it up, and you can see I have a folder here. Now you don't, or you will shortly, called updated spline scripts. Okay. And those are the scripts that we had just downloaded. You can move the entire folder, just move the entire folder into here. And that's really all you need. Now, if you don't want to have it in a separate folder, you can take them out, all the scripts out, and you can put them in with the rest of these. But I like to keep mine separated so I know where all the good stuff is. Right? All right. So you do need Giants Editor to be shut down when you're doing this. Okay. So this way, when you restart the editor, it will load all these scripts in there for you. Okay. So at this point, once you get everything copied in there, you can restart the editor, right? So we can get inside of there. And all of your scripts you can see over on the left-hand side of my screen. I have a folder called Updated Spline Scripts. All right. And there's all my scripts. Everything is nice and neat inside of there. All right. So my version may be a tad bit different than yours. I'm not sure if I actually moved that over to this machine yet or not. We'll find that out in a minute, though. Alrighty, so we're going to need another script or another spline. I keep wanting to say script instead of spline. Not sure why. Just the way it's going today, I guess. All right. Actually, what I might do is I might take this spline. I'm going to move it over like so. And I'm going to go on the start there. Put that back down on the ground. There we go. Now I got a spline I can work with. Alrighty. So what do we have first on the list? Let's go up to script, go down to updated spline scripts, and I'm going to hit detach menu. All right. And that's going to put this out here where I can look at it and not have to keep going back into that menu every single time I want to explain something. All right. So the first thing we have on the list is Spline CSV Creator. I'm going to explain in a minute what that does. And I'm going to give you a good example of what that does. And that's just basically, like I said, it's another spline tool. Really, really handy. It's useful for making roads and that sort of thing. I'll explain a little bit more in just a moment. Next on the list, we have spline placement. This is if you want to place anything on the map. If you're doing trees or if you want to lay down fences or just about anything you can think of can be laid down or can be placed on the map using this placement tool. All right. And then you have terrain height, which is like basically what we did here when we made that ramp. And we have terrain paint, which is, again, the same thing that we did when we painted that ramp. All right. So I am going to have to make another spline here because I want to show you something specific with this, the first listing there, the CSV creator. So I'm going to go to create spline. I'm going to create a spline and I'm going to move over to, let's move over into this area maybe. Okay, so I'm going to put this spline down. Yeah, this should be a good area. I'm going to hit Control B. I'm going to put it down right here. Got to get on to the end of that spline. Oops. The end of the spline, I'm going to put all the way over here. Okay, so now if you're familiar with my videos, all right, and if you've been watching anything about splines and doing roadways and stuff, I'm going to make this into a road. Okay, and that's going to be the spline that I'm using. Right, you see, and it goes right through this big hill. And right now you're probably saying, Bauer, you're nuts, because it's just not going to work the way you want it to. And you'd be correct. Under normal circumstances, you would be absolutely 100% correct. All right, so normally what we would do, starting here when we're working on the spline, I would put multiple control vertexes in here very close by hitting insert, insert, insert. This way, when there's an elevation change, for example, a hill, I'm more likely to catch that elevation change and not go through the hill like I did here. Because remember, the traffic needs to follow along this spline, right? And if I leave it just the way it is with these just 2 points, well, 3, there's one in the middle. But if I leave it just the way it is and traffic tries to follow that, they're going to disappear into this hill. It's going to be an ugly mess. You know, you would never, ever do this under normal circumstances, right? But what this tool does is it allows us to do this. I know, crazy, right? But just bear with me here and I'll explain it. All right, so let's go up here to our scripts themselves, and we're going to click on Spline CSV Creator Setup. Okay. And there's only 2 things what we need to provide for this thing right here. Okay. Oh, and by the way, you want to keep your user attributes window open. Make sure that's open, and also your console. These are 2 very useful items to have open, especially the attributes. You're going to need that open. So now the first thing that we need to provide for this is the map name. Now, this is not a file path. It's just the name of your map. All right. So mine is, what is mine? It's map.us. Okay. _ tutorial series. All right. So like I said, just the name, not a file path, just the name. All right. So the very next thing we have down here is the CSV distance. Okay. So this is for the control vertexes. Like, how far apart do you want these control vertexes? Some people call them control points or what have you. How far apart do you want them? All right. Now I'll show you something really quickly on, I'm not sure how I want to explain this. If you keep them closer together, all right, anywhere in the area of, let's say, 5 meters in between is usually pretty good for like a roadway, 10 meters, railroad tracks, that sort of thing. The one thing that I want to show you really quick is we'll head back over here. Okay. Let's see right here. It says, and this is for the CSV creator. It says the lower the number, the more CVs, and the greater the accuracy and alignment in Blender or when using the spline placement script. Generally, a value for 5 for roads and 10 or more for train tracks gives a smoother incline, and it should be sufficient. But bear in mind, the distance set will be the size of your individual road or / rail sections in Blender. Okay, so what they mean by that, and I'm gonna explain more of this in just another minute because I want to show you some things here. Well, one, like I said, we're for the purpose of the script itself, I'm going to keep it at 5. Okay, so that's going to give me a control vertex every 5 meters. All right. Now, what happens here is when we'll do this right now, actually, we'll make sure that the spline is highlighted. Let's click on Spline CSV Creator. Okay, and we're all done. Now, I know it seemed anticlimactic, but trust me, there's a lot has happened right now. May not seem like it, but a lot did happen. All right, so let's go into our mod map folder really quick. All right, let's go back, find our mod here. All right, map.us tutorial series. Now you can see the folder. We created a folder there called CSV data. CSV, by the way, stands for comma separated values. All right. So if we open that up, we have 2 things available inside of there now. One of them is an i3D that we're going to import into our map, and the other one is a text file. Now that text file is all of your spline data. All right. So you can incorporate that. You can import that into Blender, and you can use that while constructing a road. Okay. So that's what that little tidbit that I read to you, that's what that means. Like the road segments are going to be that distance. Okay. And it's hard for me to explain because there's a lot to it. Right. And now don't misunderstand me. You can't just import this into Blender and come out with a road. All right. So this does take a working knowledge of Blender. You really need to know what's going on inside of there. And again, what I do recommend is go over to Farmer Boys. There's an entire tutorial over there on how to do this, on how to import everything into Blender, how to go through about, creating the roadway, bringing it back into the Giants editor. All right. So that's what is meant by that. That's what this text file does. Okay. But for now, we're interested in just dragging this this first one, the i3D. We're going to import that into Giants Editor. Okay, so now you can see what we have there. The spline that I just imported that used to go right through this hill no longer does, right? It hugs the contours of that hill perfectly, right? It does not get any better than that. I would use that spline in my traffic system any day of the week. All right. And that just saved loads and loads of time, right? Because you have a control vertex literally every 5 meters, right? So if you were to do this by hand and keep it straight, never going to happen, right? It just wouldn't, right? So to lay down your traffic system now, because you got all of these roads that need to get done, both sides of them, it's going to take a quick minute to get all that done. But with the aid of this tool, it seriously speeds up that process, right? So that's one of the major ways that I use that. Okay. Now, like I said, I do recommend that you go over and you follow along with the tutorial if you're interested in how to make the actual road inside a Blender. All right. And it's not just roads, right? Like you do railroad tracks and there are even other things. I've seen water planes made this way also, right? So if you're interested in doing a water plane, now they don't have the exact tutorial for that in there, but you can use this spline in the creation process, right? So anyhow, that's how I use that. That's it's the number one way that I use that CSV creator there, besides roadways. But I actually use Spline Street Constructor mostly for my roads right now. And mostly because I'm not really a Blender guru. I've been dabbling and trying to get better, and I got so many things going on right now. It's more of a time issue for me right now than it is a know-how. Well, I mean, it's definitely a know-how. I don't have the knowledge. It's not the ability to learn. It's just the time that it takes. But we're getting there. Baby steps, right? All right. So back to our other spline. Okay, we're gonna save placement for last. I just want to go over the terrain height and the paint setup really quick. All right. So like I said, these it's exact same thing as the other tools, except there are more bells and whistles. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna which did I have here? Let me see. That's my other spline. Yep, that's my other spline. Just trying to figure out where I'm at here. Okay, so for this spline, what I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to go into terrain height setup. And also, while I'm here at the same time, I'm going to click terrain paint setup. All right, so there you go. So now you can see all the options we have here. Now we can do both of these at once if we want. I mean, you'll have to run one script. You run them one after another. It won't do both scripts simultaneously. All right, but you can set them up at the same time is what I meant. All right, so for the terrain height, now you remember how we affected the land surface with the last script, right? So this is the same thing here. We have the center width. Now what's different with this is if you want an 8 meter wide anything, whether you're going to paint it or you're going to affect the ground surface, if you want 8 meters, then you have to put in 8 meters. This does not work with half widths, all right? So like, just keep that in mind. Push the whole half width thing right out of your mind because we're not using that with this. That's a thing of the past, all right? I mean, it's still, I don't want to confuse you guys. Just make sure that if, as far as this script is concerned, when working with these tools that you use, if you want 8 meters, put in 8 meters. If you want 4 meters, put in 4 meters. Just remember that. All right, so that's your center width. That would be the width of whatever you're trying to create, like we did over here, okay? Where we got the width. And then the height works exactly the same way. A negative number will get you down into the ground, positive number gets you above, or just plain old 0, okay, would get you right up to the height of the spline itself. And then we have a box here for edge transformation, okay, because we can set edges on this one as well. So we have a left edge and a right edge. Now we can paint those edges with any texture that we choose, right? We can pick the width. Now not only could you pick the center width of what you're working with, say like, if you had like a 6 meter wide roadway, and then you want to do like a 2 meter wide edge, right? So you would set that edge width here. And then you have an edge height, left and right. So you can change, the edges. You can have a higher edge on one side than you do on the other for whatever reason, right? So you can, and I'm not really going to do this. Like I said, I'm going to kind of skip some of these examples. I just basically want to go over really quick on a few of the attributes here, okay? But like I said, with the edge widths, you can set your width, and then you can also set individual heights for the left and right edges, right? And then you have the last attribute you have down here is for set edge smoothing, right? And it's the same thing as your smoothing brush. Now with this, I believe a lower value would be a harder edge and a higher value would be a smoother edge. All right. And it does come in handy. Now I've used this like when creating riverbeds and stuff like that. It's definitely come in handy. All right. So you're going to want to play around with that a little bit. It's kind of nice that it gives you, not only that center width that you can work with, but also the edges. You'll find ways to use it. Trust me. Right now you might be thinking, what in the world am I going to use that for? Trust me, you will definitely find a way to use that. And again, like I said, I'm going to say this multiple times throughout this video. Get over to the website, go over to Farmer Boys, check it out. They give you some examples of how to use this. Under what circumstances would you use it? Not only to give you an example, but they show you how. So get on over there. All right. And the very next thing that we're going to do, and by the way, like some of this, how I would normally use this, one of the most, I use it for lots of different ways. My top two, I guess, would be creating a riverbed or any kind of creek or stream or ditch, like a gully. I would create that using a spline, and I'd use a negative value. And that's how I would create my riverbed. Or when I'm doing my roadways. All right. So when I'm prepping my road surfaces, whether I'm prepping them to be painted or I'm prepping them for an actual road surface, like a spline street constructor, I would use this. I would keep a 0 value, right, for my spline height, and then I would just set my width. So if it's an 8-meter road, then I would set 8 meters. I'd run the script, and then it would flatten out an 8-meter area for me. Okay. And if you want an example of this, I do have a video. It was part of the tutorial series, the beginner series. And it was creating our roads, like working with splines and creating our roads, something along those lines. All right. And I give you an example of exactly how I created these roads here. All right. So you can go back and watch that. We're going to maybe skip that part for now. And it is really, it's easy as, like I said, the center width, we'll just do it. Say we'll do 8, and you really won't see anything happen here. Right. So I'm going to keep the spline height at 0. And then I would just basically run the script, make sure spline is highlighted. All right. And in this way, if there was any imperfections along the route of the spline, actually, it's not done running yet, and I'm being impatient. Got a little ahead of myself there. All right, let's give it a second. Hey, for some reason, every time the first time I run the script, it usually takes just an extra second or two. And then I'm being impatient and I keep clicking on things, and then I get the hourglass that you see there, the thinking symbol. But that's just me. All right. So like I said, if there's any, what did I have that set at? You know what? I had my, see how I had this end of the spline was raised up off the ground surface. That's why I have that there. That's why it looks like it affected, it came up off the ground. But it did exactly what it was supposed to. I kept it at 0. Okay. And it probably can't see it here, but like I said, if there was any imperfections in my ground, like if I was on a hill or there's any kind of bumpiness there, it would have taken an 8-meter area. All right. It would have taken an 8-meter area, like 8 meters wide, maybe from this side to this side. Okay. And it would have flattened everything down the total length of that spline. All right. So everything in here would have been nice and flat. So it basically prepped my road surface for me. Okay. And that's pretty nice. Can't go wrong with that, right? Of course not. Absolutely not. And then what happened down here, why we have this, why it's sticking up off the ground that way is because my spline right here, I had that elevated. It's off the ground. And that's basically the same thing that we did on the other side, right? Oops. Didn't want to do that. That's the same thing we did on this other side here for this ramp. Okay, that's how we got that effect. We lifted up one end of the spline, and then we kept our value at 0, and then we just ran the script. All right, so we got the same thing here. So it worked exactly the way we wanted it to, which is great. All right, so we got that out of the way. So play around with that. Go over to the website, read up on it, and then start playing around with it. Now, the same thing with terrain paint. We have the center width texture, so we know what that does, or the center texture width. I'm sorry. All right, so we went with, what did we go with? 8 meters. Okay, so we had 8 meters there. Now we have set edge texture width. So if we want edges on this, and this is how I pulled off the effect for this roadway here. Okay. All right. So I had my center width. I had my center width, and my center width was, this asphalt area that you see right here. Okay. That was my center. And then my edges are out here on the sides. Okay. So here's your center width. Just set this, and this would have been like 8. And I'm not sure what these edges were. They might have been like 1 or 2. Okay, say they were 2. I'm not sure on that one. But that's how I created that. I just had to pick those textures, set my widths, and then I was good to go. That's exactly how I got that done. All right, so set your edge texture width. And I'm not going to put edges on this one. But if you're going to do a roadway, play around. Try 1 the first time. And if it doesn't look right, go back and try it again with 2. All right, and then you can set the edge texture left. Now, you can see what I did over on my roadway is I used gravel, like a gravel dirt. All right. And then the same thing with my edge texture right. I used gravel dirt. And then my center texture, I use like an asphalt. Now, where are you getting these texture IDs from? That's what goes there, the texture ID, by the way. Don't let me confuse you on that one. So you're saying that's just great, but where do I get them? Well, this is why I recommend keeping your console open, okay? Because with this updated version of the script, all right, what they do here is if you start scrolling through, look at that. Okay. There's actually, let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see. All right. Here is all of your textures and the IDs associated with it. Okay. Where it says texture number, that's the texture ID. All right. That's what they want in that box right there. So this came bundled with that script that you just downloaded, right? How great is that? You don't have to have a separate script to do this. You don't have to have multiple scripts anymore. It's all bundled into this one nice, neat little package for you guys. All right. So that's what goes in there. You pick the textures that you want. It makes it really, really easy. Plug them in and then just run it. Really, really easy. All right. And then this set distance between textures does exactly what it does. Exactly what it says is it affects the distance between the textures. All right. So let's pick out a texture here. I'll give you a quick example. What do we got? Let's try, where's concrete? There it is. Concrete. 78. We'll put that for the center texture. Where are we at here? Center texture. 78, did I say? Yep, 78. So let's try 78. All right. Now 0.5 is the default value for this, but let's say you moved it up to like 2.5. All right. And then we try running this, and we'll run a terrain paint. Okay. See what happened there? Your textures now came out, exactly what it says, every 2.5. All right. If you go over to their website, they give you a bunch of examples of how to, I don't know if there's a bunch, but they definitely give you examples on how to use this. All right. So just so you know what that does, right? I know everybody's wondering, like, what is that? Well, that's what that is. So if I run this again, now I'll have a solid stripe going down the middle. Okay. Like so. All right. Easy peasy. Yes, sir. So that's how I do it. That's how I created these roadways here. That's how I created the dirt path that's over on the home farm. Like I said, I use it for a variety of other things. All right. So the last thing that we have, and I use this one quite often for putting down guardrails and fences and sometimes even tree lines, or I've done rocks next to a river this way. There's a lot of different ways that you can use the placement part of this script. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all these because I'm going to use the same script. Now, I may not have to delete all these, but my OCD right now is telling me to get them going. So that's what I'm going to do. All right. So what I'm going to do is we're going to place a fence here. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Spline Placement Transform. Okay. We're going to click on that. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a transform group for us right here. You can see it just showed up, called spline objects. Okay. So when I open that up, we have something in there called spline placement. All right. So when I click on this, there's all kinds of attributes that showed up inside of here. All right. And we're going to go through these in a minute. I'll show you what they are. Oh yeah, mine is a little bit different. So I did move this over. I'll explain the differences here in a second to you guys and tell you why mine looks a little bit different. All right. And so inside that spline placement, we have 2 more called objects to place and placed objects. All right. So we're going to need an object to place first of all. So let me show you something here really quickly. Let's try this lower wooden fence array. Okay. I'm going to pick one of these, Control B. I'm going to set it down. Okay. Now, when we place an object, all right, when we place an object along a spline, it goes from start to end, right, on your spline, the S and E on your spline, and it goes in the direction of the blue arrow. So if you're doing something with a long edge, like a fence or a guardrail or something like that, you want this long edge there. All right. And what I mean by long edge is right here. You want this long edge to line up with this blue arrow right here. All right. So now what you're going to do is you want to move. How do I want to explain this? You can use the handle, or you can put it needs to go -90. Now I know it needs to get moved that far, right? So -90 would be in this direction. And you want to line it up so that this edge up here, right? This long edge is, well, 90 degrees. It's now where this blue arrow is. Now the blue arrow is going to move over here, but I'm going to show you how to fix that in a minute. Okay. I know I'm starting to look like, like John Madden with the whole chalkboard thing there. Anyhow. So let's go over to, I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So if we were to not move this, right? So if we were to just run that script the way that it is, what we would get is it would lay these fence pieces down like this. Okay. So we'd have one after the other, whatever distance we set, we would have them laying like this. And that's not right. That's not the way a fence is supposed to look. They're supposed to go end to end the other way. All right. So how do we fix that? Well, that's what I'm trying to say. This needs to be in the direction of the blue arrow. So I know that it needs to get moved -90. Okay. Now see what happened there? Now, oh, I have two fences there. I guess I didn't delete the other one. Okay. So what happened now is this long edge is facing the way that this blue arrow used to face. All right. So once you have that, once you move it, that's the whole, what you're trying to do there. Like I said, is, look at what direction the blue arrow is currently facing. And if it doesn't face the same direction as your edge, you need to move, rotate your object so it does face that direction. Okay. But like I said, the blue arrow is going to move, but we're going to fix that. So once you do that, okay, you want to go up to, you can either right click on that object and go to freeze transformations, or you can go up to edit and you can go down to freeze transformations. All right. So once you do that, all right, you want to make sure that rotate, uncheck everything except for rotate. Make sure rotate is checked and then click apply. Okay. Now you see what just happened there? Our blue arrow is now in line with the long edge. Okay. And that's how we prep that fence piece to be used inside that placement tool. Okay. Now for me, we're just going to leave it at that for now. Okay. I'll leave that. I'll leave that there. All right. So that's how you prep this. That's how you make sure when you run that tool that these are going to come out end to end like they're supposed to. Okay. And, and what I mean by that is, this end, oops, I'm sorry, is this end here, is going to touch, it's going to duplicate it. And then it's going to be this way. And then, one after another right on down the line. Right. So you'd have that long fence the way you're supposed to have it. Okay. You don't want to have that go the other way. And that's how you prep that. Now, it might say it. I'm not sure. Let's go into the script editor really quick here. I want to show you something in the script editor. Let's go up to spline placement. You know what? I changed this one. All right. But if you read yours, right, if you read the instructions up here at the top here, okay, there's some notes up here and some instructions. If you read these, that'll tell you about the long edge and freezing transformations and that sort of thing. Like I said, I did change mine though. I changed this script around. All right. And I guess maybe I should give you a quick explanation of what I changed here and why. And while I'm at it though, while I'm over here, this other stuff that you see here, right? All this stuff over here, this lower section will give you all the explanations of what these attributes are. Okay. And what they're used for. All right. So why does mine look different than yours? So let's get into that. Really quickly, I'll show you. Okay. All right. So in spline placement here. All right. This is the newest version of the script. Now there were older versions. Okay. Now with this newer version, all of the attributes that are available, all the attributes that are available in the newest version are not all of them that were available in the old version. Some of them were left out, but for good reason. Okay. And I'll explain that in a minute. Now, one of them that was left out here is letter C that you see here on my screen, which is height offset. Okay. So this is when I set something along the spline, whether it's a fence or what have you, I can affect the distance of how far above or below that spline or the ground surface that object is. All right. So that was left out for, like I said, right now, everything that you put down is going to go along the surface of the ground, which is just fine. You're not losing out on anything here, by the way. So don't panic because you have a slightly different version. All right. But I need that. I use that attribute. Okay. So I was only left with one alternative. I like the way that the new script works. I love it. I love having everything over like this, but I do miss the attributes that I used to use. Right. So basically what I did is just bring those old attributes back into the new version. All right. So when I do guardrails, the particular guardrail that I use doesn't look right when I leave it at its default value. All right. So I give it a slight negative value, shrink it down into the ground a little bit. And that's what I use that height offset for. All right. So now we have, let's see here. This internal, it says internal X, Y, and Z rotation. There's three values that you see here. Okay. These three values here. All right. That internal rotation, what that is, and this is pretty neat. Now, what I just explained to you about this fence piece here, okay, of how you need to prep that for being able to use that inside the displacement script by turning it and freezing transformation. All right, so I had to rotate it -90 to get that to work. All right, so instead of going through that process, I would just go to my internal Y rotation and I tell it, listen, when you run this script, I want you to spin that -90 degrees before you lay it down. All right. So I didn't have to go through all that, the freeze transformations and stuff like that. Now I can understand why it's done, because if you go back and, read up on this, and I'm going to say this a bunch of times, so pay attention, make sure you go over to Farmer Boys and read up on all this stuff. It gives you all the information. It's very important information about how this works. But one of them is it's always a good idea that when you're placing things down is to zero them out. Okay. And that means make sure all your translation and your rotations are all at 0. This is the object that you're placing, by the way. And then you can go up and you can do that by freezing transformations. Okay. You can freeze your rotation and your translation, get everything to 0, and then lay it down. All right. So I think that's kind of why that's that way. If it's good habit, it's a best practice to be in to zero everything out anyhow. So I can see why that's done. But I kind of like that because I don't always zero things out. I can tell by looking at whatever object I'm putting down whether it needs to be zeroed or not. So for me, it's just as easy to spin something in a direction I know it needs to go. All right. So what's the last one here? The last two are at the very bottom, align with terrain and not at terrain 0. Align with terrain gives you the option of when you're putting something down, like a fence, it'll align with the terrain. And under almost every circumstance, that's normally what you would want. Okay. Well, I do have instances where I do not. And I like having that option and the alternative would be to align it to the spline itself. Okay. So instead of, let's say you're for whatever reason, your ground surface is unnaturally bumpy or rocky or what have you. It's just all over the place. And you try to align to terrain over that surface, that's going to translate into your fence or whatever it is you're putting down. And it's going to look all over the place, right? I would have this problem with guardrails, right? Because the edge of my road wasn't always so completely smooth in some areas. Maybe it was like a mountain road or what have you. But I have a particular way of putting my guardrails down because it can be a pain sometimes. All right. And if I had it follow the terrain, they would come out crazy all over the place. So for me, it was easier to have it follow the spline. And then I would use the height offset and just shrink it down into the ground a little bit. Hard to explain, but I'll show you guys a demonstration in another video. It's a process, so I don't want to get into it right now. All right, so that's what that's for, that align with terrain. So I like having the option of being able to turn that off and on, okay? Now, the version of the script that you guys have, it's always on, all right? So, and that's fine, absolutely fine. I would say under 98% of, the circumstances you're going to use this, that's exactly what you would need, aligned terrain. So no fault in that one. There's no problem with that there. And then not at terrain 0 would technically, not technically, but basically it would say if you're off of the map, or, you're trying to place an object outside the map, or maybe a similar scenario. Okay. But I leave that there only because, again, you like to having that option if for whatever reason, and I never needed it, but if for whatever reason you did need to put something down at terrain 0, whether you were physically at terrain 0 on your elevation on your terrain itself, or if you're outside the map. I'm not sure why you would be placing things outside the map. But either way, I like having that option just in case I ever do run into it. I'm not restricted. You know what I mean? I'm not confined to what the script allows me to do. This way it gives me a little bit of flexibility. But like I said, this is the exact setup, maybe minus, there might be one extra attribute that I didn't include back in. All right. So this is the exact same as the old script. Okay. These are all the attributes that were available in that one. I just happened to use those attributes and I missed them. So I brought them back. All right. Not a big deal. So like I said, don't panic if my version does not look exactly like yours. So, all right. So let's go over this really quickly. So we prepped our fence, right? So you rotated it. We freeze transformations. We got everything lined up really nice. All right. What we want to do is we need to find, we're going to put that into this folder right here, this objects to place. All right. Now I have another fence that I want to use. I think in fence templates here, I have this white fence. I'm going to use this only because it's a little more visible. Right. And I can show you, a little bit better on this one. Right. And it's already set up too. So you got to put that in objects to place. Okay, now the spline that we're going to be using to place this fence, all right, you want to make sure that use your middle mouse button and drag that into your spline placement transform group. Okay, it needs to be in there or else this will not work. All right, and like I said, when you run this script, it's going to go from start to end. Not that that makes a huge difference, but for one of these things I'm going to explain to you, it does. All right, now let's start going through some of these. We'll set this up, right? So I'll explain what some of these mean. All right, to the best of my knowledge anyhow. So set object distance is going to be the actual distance between objects, right? So our fence piece was, mine is 2 meters long, right? So we would put this at 2 meters, and then every 2 meters, okay, it would lay down that fence. Now, if you've got something bigger, 8 meters, 6 meters, you want to try to, or not try, but you want to figure out how long is the object that you're placing down. If it's a fence or a guardrail, but if you're doing like trees or something like that, basically you're just telling it at what distance do you want that to place the object. That was one of the other changes I made too. Now, this is an integer that they had set up here, so I could only use 2. But on some circumstances, like if I'm doing like a fence, like on a hill or something like that, I'd set mine to like 1.98. So I changed mine into a float. So you're not going to be able to put a decimal into yours right now. Now, somewhere down the road, I'm not sure what I'm going to do here. Maybe this version of this script will be available on my website when that's done. Or maybe I'm not sure what the guys over there at Farmer Boys have in mind that, I didn't even talk to those guys yet, but maybe they'll have this version on their site as well. I don't know. I don't know. I don't like messing with other people's scripts though. That makes me feel bad. So that's why that's why I thought I had the old version and we weren't going to have to get into this in this video. But either way, so the height offset, I'm not going to mess with in this one. And like I said, you don't have that option anyhow, so we're okay with that. Use distance table. Now the distance table, if you check this, it'll use this. The next attribute is the distance table, okay? And what that would do is you're basically predefining a list of values or distances to set these things down at. So it will set 1 at 1 meter, it'll set 1 5 meters later, and then, right on down the line. So depending on what values you have in there. Stay upright is pretty self-explanatory. Like we went over with the trees one day. Remember, you can have that tree, like if you're putting trees on this rampway here, you can have them, you can have these trees stay, upright like this. Or if you have that unchecked, you can have them like, if you're going up the hill, they might lean with the hill instead of staying perfectly straight up and down. Okay. So that's what the stay upright is all about. And then random scale, that's pretty self-explanatory too. It would randomly change the scale of the object that you're putting down. And the next two attributes are the low value and high value. So you might only want to go as small as half of, its normal width or height, basically, I guess it would be. And the same thing with the high value. All right. So some people would use this on trees, which I do not recommend doing because it messes with logging. If you have any intentions on your map of cutting those trees down, it interferes with that. So I don't recommend scale on trees. I did use this once when I was placing boulders down. I was placing boulders along the edge of a river and I changed the scale, and it gave it a nice random look, looked really good. All right. So that's what the scale does there. Now the random Y rotation would be like maybe you're making a tree line, or again with the boulders, make sure that's clicked and it'll spin it on its Y axis before it lays it down. All right, so random object distance. I may have to go back and read the explanation for these because from the old version of the script, I used to know exactly what it was. Now, random object distance, you would click that. Now, we have the distance set at 2 meters, okay? But say we're doing trees. And by the way, you could have more than one object in this objects to place transform group. Like you can have a bunch of trees in there, okay? Now, say you have a bunch of trees in there. You can click on this random object placement, okay? And then what that'll do, or the random object distance, and it'll place them at different distances, random distances, okay? And that's what it would do. All right, and that's a pretty nice feature to have. All right, and below that, we have set random object distance seed, and that's basically just a percentage value. And you can increase that value to affect the randomness, I guess you could say, of that object distance. All right. And then random object placement. All right. So normally what it would do is if you have more than one object in this objects to place transform group, it'll start reading from the top of the list down to the bottom of the list, and it will place them in that order. Okay. With multiple objects. All right. Well, when you check that, it will just pick them randomly. It won't put them in the order listed. It'll place them randomly, which again, comes in handy with like rocks or trees or something like that. Okay. And then the set random object placement distance is the distance from the spline. Okay. So it will go so far away from this spline. It's not just in a straight line. Like say if we have this set to 5, for example, like if we change this value, it's on 1 now, but say we change that to a 5. All right. And what that'll do for us is it'll go up to 5 meters, okay, off either side of that spline. So it won't go any further than that, but that it gives you that little bit of flexibility either way, as it lays these objects down along that spline. So instead of having things in a straight line, gives it a nice random look. And that's how you would set the distance that, you want to give it. So say don't go any further. It's fine that you lay them down randomly, but don't go any further than this distance. That's what that is. Alrighty. And then the last one on the list, we have fixed distance. Okay. And this one's kind of neat. I like fixed distance. Fixed distance. What that is if you have this checked, okay. Now, normally when I lay this fence down, it's going to go right here along the center of this spline. Okay. It's going to follow that spline. But with a fixed distance, I can put it to the right or the left of that spline. Now, this works looking if you're standing at start, okay, and you're looking towards the end up here, okay? This is hard to do with a mouse, by the way. All right, so if you have in this set distance fixed, the value, if you have a positive value, all right, it's going to place this fence to the right of that spline, however far you tell it. So 5 meters, it's going to go 5 meters out to the right and place it there. All right. So if you give it a negative value, like a -5, then it's going to go the other way. It's going to go 5 meters to the left and place that fence. All right. And this is really great. Once again, I recommend going over to the website, look at the examples they give you, and they'll show you what this all does. And they got some really, really cool ones, man. I think there might be like a fence or a guardrail on one side and a hedgerow on the other side. Right. And awesome. And it's neat. You need to go over there and check it out. It's really, really, really useful. Like I said. All right. So now with all that, we're able to put our fence down. Okay. So like I said, you went through already and you prepped your fence, right? So you have that all set up to be set down. Now make sure you measure the length of your fence. If it's 2 meters, 4 meters, 8 meters. Now mine happened to be 2. Now I have this on 1.98, but that's generally where I keep it anyhow. So that's fine for me. 2 is, like I said, absolutely fine. It's not going to hurt anything. I just have, I have some quirky, weird, I don't know. I'm used to doing things a certain way and hard habit to break for me, I guess, right? All right. So we don't want to use distance table, stay upright. No, we don't want to do that. We want it to follow the contour of the ground, right? We want it to be able to lean one way or the other. Random scale. Nope. We don't want that. We don't want a random Y rotation because that would be just weird. My internal, I got to put back on 0 or it's going to spin my fence on me. No random order, no random object distance. So everything else should be unchecked. Okay. And this is going to put our fence down for us. So once you have that done, you like I said, you have to prep that piece of fence or whatever it is that you're going to put down. All right. And once that's all in place, your splines inside the spline placement transform group, the fence pieces in the objects to place, we can go ahead and we can run that. Okay. So I'm going to go to spline placement. Okay. And there you go. We have a fence, right? And it couldn't be any easier if we tried, right? See, look how nice that is. Laid it down the whole entire length there, right? Really, really, really nice. Okay. So that worked out beautifully. Absolutely beautifully. All right. Now, if for some reason you decide, with any of these other scripts, like especially with the paint and the terrain height and stuff, there is no undo. Okay. So keep that in mind. If you need to, you just have to paint back over top of, something if you want to get rid of it. Or what I always do and I recommend doing is save your map before you do anything. Save your map, make a backup of your DEM if you're like affecting land surfaces or something like that. And then if things go, they go south or they go sideways on you, you can always hit this recycle button up here, this reload i3D. Reload your i3D and it'll get you right back to the state you were, at save time. Okay. But the nice thing about the placement tool is there is a delete. Okay. So we can get rid of these. Now you could either go into the placed objects folder. This is where I put everything, by the way. All the fence pieces it just created are inside the placed objects. But if you're too lazy to go in there and, well, not lazy, but why would you want to go in there and delete all of them by hand when you can just go to spline placement, delete, and just delete everything just like that. Okay. So let me even give you a really quick example of the fixed distance. Okay. Say we want a fence on either side of our pathway here. Okay. And what we can do is we give it the positive value 5, make sure fixed distance is checked. All right. And we're going to run the spline, or we're going to run the script one more time. All right. And there you go. You can see that that fence now came out 5 meters off of our spline. And we could do the same thing to the left, right? So maybe this is a driveway or something. We want a fence on either side of our driveway. All right. So we can do that and we can run it one more time. And there you go. Okay. So now you just got, if you were to put these fences down by hand, you would probably still be doing this. Oh, there we have a problem. All right. See, then this is only because I have this elevated surface here. Now, this would be a situation where I would think that, for me personally, now I would never normally have a fence in an area like this. That's just god awful. I wouldn't do that. But depending on the situation, maybe say the spline that ran underneath this, I would have that aligned to the spline instead of the ground surface. Okay. Let's see if that actually fixes anything. I'm not sure if the way that I have this script set up, if it will do that on the fixed version or not, but let's see what it does. Let's delete these. Okay. And I'm going to put, let me see here. Okay. Align with terrain. I'm going to turn that off. Let's try running that one more time. Yeah, it still did it. All right, that's fine. It only works on this center spline, not on the fixed value here. That's okay though. Not a problem. But normally I wouldn't have a fence, like I said, next to this, like hanging out in midair like that. It wouldn't be too good. All right. But you get the idea. So like I said, I mean, it dramatically increases your, the speed at which you can get this stuff done. And it doesn't have to be a straight line. Now, don't get all crazy with your twists and turns and stuff like that, but you can definitely put some curves into things. And like I said, I've done guardrails this way. I've done fences this way. I put down boulders. I put down all sorts of different things, tree lines and hedgerows. And this is how, especially if you're a solo mapper, right? You're working on projects all by yourself. You need to not cut corners, but you need to find any way you can to help speed up the process, right? And doing this by hand, I mean, that's just, that's not good, man. I wouldn't want to be putting all these fences in by hand. I mean, I've done it in certain situations, but you wouldn't want to have to do that. If at all possible, you don't want to have to do that. All right. So hopefully that answered a few of your questions as far as, which tools am I using when I do fences and stuff like that. And hopefully the other half of you had answered your questions about what some of these attributes are and how to use some of those attributes. Okay. Like I said, I'm going to say it again for the last time. Head over to farmerboysmodding.com, read through the literature for these spline tools, right? Everything is in there. It spells it all out for you as far as, what those attributes are, what they mean, how to use them. How to pull off different effects, right? And go over that. To give you examples of everything. So definitely go over there if you want to get better at your making maps and using these things. That's what you need to do. I hate to break it to you, but you need to go over there and start reading up a little bit. You need to do some studying. All right. And you shouldn't have a problem with that. That's the reason you're watching this video in the first place, right? Is to learn a few things. All right. So like I said, go over there and give it a whirl. Give it a good read, and next thing you know, you'll be teaching us. You'll be the next guy doing a video and showing everybody else how to do it. That's how much you're going to learn. All righty. So like I said, I hope that answered everybody's questions, and I was a little bit long-winded. I apologize for that. I just guess I had a lot to say being out of town for so long for the whole week. I just, feels good to be back in front of the microphone. All righty. So as usual, like I said, if you found these videos helpful in any way, shape, or form, it would really help me out if you leave a like, subscribe, that sort of thing. It definitely does help. And I guess that's it. I'm going to start working on my next video. And with that being said, I am Bauer Brown, and I will see you on the next one.